These patches, what are we trying to say? Beggar? No, let's work with me here. Ooh, I like it muy macho. Now.
It's true that we all change our looks throughout our lives, but surely, when it comes to changing appearances, no one does it more than Disney does with its characters. That's exactly what happened to one of the greatest and best-loved characters in the history of animation. We're talking about the fearless and brave sheriff, Woody, the protagonist of Toy Story. Tell me, have you ever imagined Woody differently? In the past, someone at Pixar came up with a somewhat different concept for one of Andy's favorite toys. In this version, which thankfully was not chosen, we see that Woody would have had a mouth similar to a puppet. His cowboy pants would be looser, and he would have gloves and some freckles on his face. Another thing you can notice is that his demeanor wasn't very friendly, so it's understandable why this version was discarded. Actually, this wasn't even the first version of Woody, but rather one that was created after Disney completely rejected Pixar's initial story for Toy Story, where Woody was supposed to be the antagonist, and he would look like this.
Buzz, look, an alien! Where?
Man, that would be bizarre. I can't imagine Toy Story with this guy instead of the Woody I know and love. This is just the first of the 12 Disney characters that would have looked different than you're gonna see today. Disgust. Moving on to one of the most acclaimed animated films of all time, let's talk about one of the key characters from Inside Out. Disgust. We all know she looks snooty after all, she's Disgust, and that's her role. But in her first imagined version for the movie, she had an even more snobbish appearance, if we can put it that way. The character would still have greenish skin, but with many pink accents. She would also have long, light-colored hair, somewhat resembling Barbie's style. Oh, and her eyes would be blue too. Truth be told, Disgust was the character from Inside Out that the producers had the most difficulty in choosing the design for. The evidence of that is the gigantic number of different options that were created for her, with at least 20 different known designs so far.
Hold on, what is that?
This is Disgust. She basically keeps Riley from being poisoned, physically and socially.
Luca, the main character from the 2021 animated film, also makes it to this list, as his initial concept would have been quite different from what we saw on screen. In fact, Luca had several imagined versions as options for the character. In all of them, he would retain his aquatic characteristics, but would have different shades of green, and in some cases, more monstrous appearances. Furthermore, in another version, he would have even more prominent fins and a less humanoid appearance, making it more challenging to maintain his disguise as a human. Perhaps that's why Disney opted for the version we know in the film.
What did you just say?
What's wrong with your foot?
Bruno, even though the song says,
We don't talk about Bruno, no, no, no.
Today we're going to talk about Bruno from Encanto, indeed. He's definitely one of the characters who ended up looking very different from the initial version that was envisioned for him. In fact, Bruno had several ideas before the final one was chosen. There were versions of him that were bigger and younger. There were also versions of him that were a bit older and scruffier. And there were also versions that were just different but closer to the final version, accompanied by mice and all. But I have to say, some of the alternative versions of Bruno would have been pretty cool too. Genie, another super famous Disney character that got a makeover, and for the better, was the being with sensational cosmic powers, Aladdin's genie. The idea that the animators had for the historic Disney film was certainly closer to something more terrifying than fun. And to be honest, this was one of the best versions conceived for the genie after seeing these other designs that were also created. This is definitely one of the choices I breathe a sigh of relief about.
These patches, what are we trying to say? Beggar? No, let's work with me here. Ooh, I like it muy macho. Now.
Buzz Lightyear. Well, it wasn't just Woody who had another version. Our other franchise protagonist, Buzz, was also imagined differently. In Pixar's original idea, he would be an astronaut full of details and would actually have a different name, Lunar Larry. But as we mentioned in the Woody section, Disney didn't like the film's plot, and Pixar had to change everything, including creating a different appearance for the space hero and changing his name to Buzz Lightyear, in honor of Edwin Buzz Aldrin, one of the first humans to set foot on the moon. It's better this way. I think Lunar Larry wouldn't have been as cool as Buzz. And before I forget, we're also going to talk about another Toy Story character in this video. To find out who it is, just stick with us. And if you, like us, enjoy one of the greatest franchises of all time, comment #toy down below so we know you're a fan of animated movies too. Elsa. This is certainly the most beloved former almost villain of all. We all know that Frozen was inspired by the Snow Queen tale, where the Snow Queen was the villain and is represented by Elsa in Disney's most successful animated film. The detail is that the initial idea was for the Queen of Arendelle to actually have short black hair instead of what we know her as with her long platinum blonde hair. At the time, the idea was for Elsa to be the film's villain, but they asked for her hair color to be changed to blonde. Later, the script was modified and Elsa became one of the film's protagonists, and her hair became longer as we know it, and her appearance became different. But who knows, in the upcoming Frozen films, they might reuse this design, which was pretty cool, don't you think? Mushu! Without a doubt, Mushu was the funniest character in Disney's animated Mulan film, and the one we missed the most in the live-action adaptation that Disney made. Seriously, that little guy was hilarious, and with Eddie Murphy's voice acting, it was even better.
I want to see pink flowers, pink ribbons, pink bows. I'm not talking about salmon. Don't show me no blush. I mean pink as a freshly slapped newborn's behind.
Well, the idea was always for him to be the comic relief of the film, but his appearance would have been noticeably different. A little chubbier, and definitely less smiley, for sure. Without a doubt, the film version is much better. Sebastian! Many people didn't like the version of Sebastian in the live-action adaptation of The Little Mermaid because they thought he looked too realistic and deviated too much from the original character. What many people don't know is that the region of King Triton originally had a somewhat different appearance from the one that became famous worldwide. And I have to say, this version would be closer to the live-action version. But among all of them, I still prefer the original animation version. How about you? Which one did you find the coolest among the three versions? Comment down below. We want to know. Tinkerbell, the fairy originally created to be Peter Pan's sidekick and the bearer of fairy dust over time, became extremely famous and got her own productions. What many people don't know is that Disney's probably most famous fairy had not one but several versions since Disney's inception. She started as a blonde with long hair in 1937. Then, her hair was changed to red, and she gained a sort of flower hat. The versions changed a bit year after year, but always maintaining the red hair, until in 1951, the version that would be used in Peter Pan's animated film and other Tinkerbell productions arrived, inspired by actress Marilyn Monroe. At least that's how it was until Disney recently released the Peter Pan live-action film. So the truth is, we have no idea if the version used in the film will continue to be used by the House of Mouse, since the movie wasn't very successful.
And you didn't you, Peter? After all, one can't leave his shadow lying about and not miss it sooner or later.
Rex! Remember when we said we had another Toy Story character on our list? Well, we were talking about Rex, the one who tries to be scary despite being extremely cute with his little arms. So, originally, he wouldn't have been this cute. Look at the scene that Pixar had in mind for Rex with Andy. No, we're not kidding. In fact, the idea was for Rex to be just a little different, with his color being brown instead of green, and his arms, yes, being much longer, but he would still be very timid and playful, just as we know and love him. Cruella de Vil. The same artist, named Mark Davis, who was responsible for creating the red-haired Tinkerbell, also designed the Cruella de Vil that we know in the 1961 film 101 Dalmatians. But what few people have an idea about is that this version of the villain who wanted to turn little Dalmatian puppies into a luxury coat was not the first one created by the Disney artist. The early versions of the villain were much more beautiful and elegant than the one chosen for the film, and that's exactly why they were discarded, as they weren't devil enough. The final version was so good that we can see that even in the live-action film, it served as inspiration for Emma Stone to bring the character to life. Those were the 12 Disney characters that were originally completely different. But you know what's not different? Your desire to watch great videos. That I'm sure of. So the question is, which of these two videos that are popping up for you seems cooler to watch? Click on it and then tell me in the comments.